So, Fabiana, thank you for joining me today. We will be highlighting compliance careers in biotech, and you are the perfect person to talk about this because you're currently the Senior Vice President of Compliance at immune Sciences, where you lead a team that speaks very highly of you as a leader. They've said you provide them with opportunities and a safe space to learn and empower them along the way. Those are some very powerful statements. You have a tremendous story and you are just such an inspiration. So I just want to dive in and learn more about you and your career journey. So please tell me, how long have you been in the industry?
Oh my God. First, let me start with good afternoon, Claudia. It's so good to talk to you. Um, I enjoy every and in each of our conversations. It's always so engaging. You are what future leaders need to follow. And so thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion with you. How long I've been in biotech? A long, long time. So it's probably 26 years, and who's counting, but it's been a long time.
Wow, okay, yeah, that's been a long time. I'm sure that you've learned so much along the way. I'm interested, what was your first role?
So I started my first role in the pharmaceutical industry was with Merck Sharp and Dohme. I was the director for legal in the Canadian region, Canada and Latin America. Um, Great company, great team, great memories. That's what my start in the pharmaceutical industry was.
Okay, so you kind of answered my next question. So, how did you get into compliance? Was it something that you studied for? So, naturally, it sounds like you were in the legal section. So,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your education
So I'm
and
a
how that
lawyer
led
by
you there.
training.
Hmm.
I have a master's from UCLA in international law, an LLM. I started, your typical law firm and then went into corporate. My first role was in the pharmaceutical industry was with Merck. And it was a legal role. So I was director of legal affairs. At that time, or shortly thereafter, the OIG came up with the 7 steps of a compliance program. And growing up, my parents always told me, if you want to learn something, put your hand up, volunteer. And that's what I did. So my boss at the time came out and said, look, there's no guidance about compliance programs and what are the you know, 7 elements of a compliance program that every pharmaceutical company should have. Who wants to study them and come back to the team and present? And I said, I'll do it. And all of a sudden, I became the expert. They were calling me from other regions. Oh my God, we have a compliance expert. So I started doing compliance, Claudia, when it was not even cool, when it was just nobody even knew about it, where you had to have a whole explanation of what compliance really was. There was clear understanding of what doing the right thing was, but there was no clear understanding what a compliance program should look like, feel like, and so that was the start. So for a while there, I had a dual role, so legal and compliance. And then when the OIG came out and more clearly stated that it's going to be either legal or compliance, and those are different roles, I decided that I was more interested in the compliance roles. I was enjoying the interactions with people. I was enjoying the strategic thinking about how do you implement a robust compliance program in countries that have very different legal jurisdictions. So we had global programs. I mean, at one point, further down in my career, I probably implemented compliance programs in over 200 countries. And it's really, really interesting to see how different jurisdictions, different cultures, different customs all come together when you're talking about a code of conduct or a hotline or corporate policies. So that's what I thought was interesting. And that's also where I thought I had a lot of opportunities to make a difference because I'm bicultural. I grew up in Argentina. I now been over 30 years in the US. I'm a US citizen. My family was born, my kids were born and raised here. So it gives me the opportunity to see a problem from many, many different aspects, many different, views, and with a clear understanding of what different legal systems require.
That's great. So it sounds like your education set you up well. Maybe it's not a requirement to have that legal background per se, or be a lawyer in order to be able to get into compliance, but it made your transition into compliance very easy, it sounds like, right?
Yes, and still there's a trend. Most chief compliance officers out there, of course, there's many, many exceptions, are still lawyers because there's an aspect of how does this affect the company legally that it's useful to have as knowledge. It's not a mandate, but it's good to have. But I think what set me up for success, Claudia, is growing up in Argentina where the environment during the years I was growing up there was very, very different. It was a dictatorship and it was a very unfair, unequal, unjust society with a lot of horrible things happening. So at a very young age, I learned the difference between good and bad. I learned the difference between doing the right thing and not. And I learned that there's consequences for every stance you take in life at a very young age because my father was very involved in politics. He ended up being the state secretary of industry during Alfonsin's presidency, which was the first democratic presidency after the military dictatorship. And after we had the first attempted kidnapping, I had a conversation with him as a young kid. And I said, Dad, I don't want to die. I don't want you to die, hoping that he would tell me, no, nobody's going to die. Instead, he told me, Fabiana, we're all going to die. Don't worry about that. Worry about what you're going to live for. And always remember that some things are worth dying for. For everything else, you need a plan. And I joke that I started my compliance career at 6 years old and I did not know it at that time. But basically, that upbringing gave me a lot of the tools and a lot of the experiences that make me successful today. The understanding that there's risk in everything you do. There's some risk worth taking, there's others that not. And for the ones that are not, you need a plan. You need to minimize that risk. You need the right people beside you. You need the right people making the right decisions and having the right conversations was what part of what set me up for a successful career.
Wow, you answered one of my questions where I was going to say earlier. Let's take a step back because I want to learn more about how you became who you are today and how you develop these SMART skills that are critical for effective leadership.
I think the most fundamental thing in my life is having grown up in a family that was so dedicated to doing the right thing. My father, at a very young age, he said, it's worth dying for freedom. So somebody with strong convictions, strong values, and leading by example because willing to do the right thing despite the risk is what really inspired me and what made me who I am today. Understanding how that plays, the emotional intelligence and the intuition that comes with situations like that made me a stronger leader today. And I think that being compassionate and understanding consequences also made a difference. And more importantly, one thing I learned during that time is the importance of who you have around me. In the introduction, Claudia, you mentioned about a team that speaks highly of me. Well, I can tell you, I speak very highly of them, and I value them very much. They're all working with me because they have that special touch. They have the strong leadership. They have strong intuition. They have emotional intelligence. And that's what makes them special leaders. It's not about the knowledge, which obviously they have. It's about who they are and how they apply that knowledge that makes them different. And so, long time ago, I was interviewed for a note at The Guardian, and Dr. Patty Fletcher asked me, how do you choose your team? And I said, I look at them and think, would I be kidnapped with them? And, basically is saying, in other words, who do you want around you during a difficult time? Who do you want around you during a crisis? And so those skills to me are hard to come by, but they're so important and make all the difference when you want to make a difference or when you're in a difficult time.
You said a word that I recognized. You said crises, and I remember reading about you being known as the crisis queen in your field. So I wanted to ask you, where did that title come from? And then we can talk about maybe, let's say, if we wanted to create principles around being able to navigate through a crisis, what would those principles be? What would they look like? But if you want to start with, where did the title come from?
I'll start with that story. So, long time ago, well, when I was 6 years old in school, our teacher asked us, what do we want to be when we were old? So I remember standing by a classmate that say, I want to be a tree so I don't have to talk to people. I thought, oh my God, that's wise. Then she comes to me and says, Fabiana, what would you want to be? And I said, I want to be a queen. And I said, to put the bad people in jail, to set the right people free. I was basically thinking about social justice in a world that was upside down during the dictatorship in Argentina. And she looked at me and she said, well, you cannot be a queen, choose something else. And I said, okay, I'll be a lawyer for the same reasons. And so telling this story to my team long time ago, they decided that they would give me T-shirt that said compliance only second to being the queen. And I became the queen of compliance. But the fact is, you have to be passionate to make a difference. That's why you choose compliance. You have to love working with people. You have to love making sure that the right things happen, and you have to have the courage to stand up to evil. And so that's what makes successful compliance lawyers or compliance professionals.
From the outside looking in, I could see how you're talking about essentially the skills that are important and needed to be successful in a compliance role in particular. If you have any others, I'm more than open to hearing them, but it sounds like for you, these things are just very, very tied to your values and the values that you were taught when you were such a young girl, like you were a kid.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Claudia. I think that, you bring to work your values. You are who you are. And the more transparent and authentic you come, the more people are willing to follow you. I think that's one of the traits of strong leaders.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how even when you were 6, you wanted to be a queen or a lawyer, and you did become a lawyer. And I don't think I know many people who really are working in a field that they thought they would be working in at a young age, right? Like from my experience, I wanted to be a choreographer when I was a kid. Like I love dancing, and then here I am and I work in clinical research. I definitely have a creative side to me. But as I've grown and matured, there's definitely another side of me that just wants to make an impact, and being part of research and collecting data that is going to ultimately help people have access to the right products. Like that's the bigger picture for me. I feel like I'm making a bigger impact there, and I still feel like very fulfilled because of that. Like a lot of my values were one thing when I was younger, and they've slowly evolved as I've matured. Just naturally, because your parents only teach you what they're able to, and my parents were working with a very like a 3rd grade education because of lack of resources. So very fascinating how even at a young age you had those values, and
well,
that's helped
and
you.
I think that we share that, Claudia. I think we share a passion to make a difference. And that even though our journeys were different, our desires were very similar, and our passion to make a difference is what dictated many of the decisions we made in our lives. So I found that I could be more effective in influencing change by being a lawyer. I mean, a queen would have been better. I still regret it, but given that that was not an opportunity given, I went with my second best. But the fact is that it's always been the desire to make a difference, and that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed to today. It expresses differently as you get older. You express it differently, and you have different opportunities to do that. But and you know, your circle in many ways becomes smaller. The people that influence you are less, but the journey becomes more interesting.
It's a little deeper as you
Yes.
continue to mature. Yep, I agree with that. Would you say that it's a specific personality or a certain set of skills then that are important and needed to be successful in compliance, or is it a combination of the two?
I think you have to have the skills. Like anything
The
else in
skills.
life, you need to know what you're talking about. But more important, from compliance leader especially, is the values, is the leadership skills, is the ability to foster an environment where people are not afraid, to foster an environment of diversity, where ideas are heard, where you inspire others, where you lead by example, where you show the way. That makes most successful compliance professionals.
I love everything you said, and it aligns with. I had a recent conversation with someone else in the industry, and they were talking about belonging and the feeling of belonging. And you pretty much hit every one of the principles that's needed for belonging. To make people feel safe, to make people feel like they're being included, like they matter, empowering them.
Yes, and that, you know, translates in everything you do in life. Um,
Mhm.
a- and it also influences those closest to you. So the other day, for example, I have three amazing kids, and they're amazing because they're so committed to making a difference. And they grew up seeing their mother and their father thinking that this was so important as part of their upbringing. And the other day, you know, my daughter calls me and says, "Mom, you're going to see a charge in your American Express. I wanted to go to McDonald's for a soda." And because she's vegetarian, she doesn't eat McDonald's very much. So I was surprised to see that she went to McDonald's, but she saw a homeless woman there and invited her in and bought her lunch. The fact that they're willing to stand up, you know, to what's right, they're willing to do the right thing, they're willing to help others. They have the courage to stand up to their ideals. It's what makes them special and what makes me so proud of them. But see, they grew up seeing that, and I grew up seeing that.
We talked a little bit about where, your title, Queen of Crises, came from. Can we talk about if we were to create principles around navigating through a crisis, what would those principles be?
So, my first thing I think I already alluded to, have the right people around you. Second thing I would say is having a plan, because you react to what you're trained, you know, what you have discussed. So having a
Mhm.
plan and having trained the right people is very important. Emotional intelligence is extremely important. It's understanding your strength, your weaknesses, and how other people around you complement you, and how you complement others, and what's important, especially when you're executing on uh, very short timelines or with very little information, because most of the time during a crisis you don't have the whole picture. So the next thing I'm going to say is you have to be comfortable making decisions without full set of facts. You have to be
Mhm.
flexible enough to change, you know, direction. You have to be
Mhm.
humble enough to accept you made a mistake, and you have to be courageous enough to correct that mistake.
Wow. Yeah, That's very powerful. I think all of those things definitely require, as a leader, to have a high level of emotional intelligence. Um, so it sounds like, so having the right people around you, um, being able to do the right thing, being able to flex, very important. It's with the emotional intelligent piece. Would you say that being able to manage oneself, like, knowing and managing what we're feeling so we can tailor our response to different situations, would you say that that's a critical skill that's needed to effectively handle a crisis as a leader?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
And
so,
there's studies
mhm.
over, about emotional intelligence, about intuition, about people reacting, same training, same situation. Two soldiers in Afghanistan, one reacts one way, the other one reacts differently, and the outcomes are different. So
Mhm.
having the ability to measure your response and to assess a situation around you that's rapidly evolving, critically important. And so that I think makes the difference.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And then with what you said, as far as having the right people around you, trying to either find people who similarly have, the emotional intelligence. Um, it sounds like it's important too, so that you can trust them, or at least train them, right? Teach them how to handle the situation as it
Absolutely.
comes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
then, and then you also have the right people around you because they have different skill sets than you do. Strong leaders embrace diversity and are bringing around them people that have different skill sets. They look different, they sound different, they come from different places, they have had different experiences, and that's what makes a strong team.
Yeah, and you knowing that and recognizing that, I think, is what allows you to empower your team then, right?
Absolutely.
It's a driver. It's
Absolutely.
like, that this is needed, and you know that the end result is going to be even better.
And
Um,
truly, when they all came, generally the people that work with me for a long time. They've known me and um, they continue wanting to work with me. And one of the things we always do from the very beginning, I always share with them what I'm good at and what I need help with. So I definitely can tell you what my strengths and my areas of opportunity are. And generally, I bring together people that have, strengths in my areas of opportunities, and I can help where my strengths are. So, I'm not afraid to share what my areas of opportunity are. I also can definitely count on my strengths, which I know what they are, and I can rely on.
mhm. Being able to share your areas, your strengths, and then your also your areas where you need improvement. It's like a very vulnerable thing for people to be able to do, and I think, from my experience, it requires a lot of confidence, right? So I've seen leaders who are just really uncomfortable with that. I myself, when I was younger, was uncomfortable with it. I think part of it is just the way that I was raised, and it's taken time for me to work on myself and become a lot more comfortable. But I could tell you that as as I continue to work on my emotional intelligence, that's something that's become like a lot easier for me to do, to say, you know what, like, I know what I bring to the table. I don't, if somebody has something to say about it, I'm not going to be uncomfortable. Like, if anything, it's in those are my blind spots that they're bringing up, and I should be open to that and accepting of that, because I want to grow. If I'm all knowing, then I have nowhere to grow, right?
Absolutely.
In the essence of this being, a focus and highlighting careers in compliance, I'd love to give listeners a better idea of what it's like to work in compliance. And I think you probably have so many great examples. I'm hoping you can share an example of maybe either the most exciting project or the most high stakes project you've worked on.
Oh, I have a lifetime of these, and without, sharing about any company or any specific project because it might be confidential or it might involve other people outside of my team, I can tell you that my days are all different. Every day is different and every day brings something good. I think the best part about working in compliance is the ability to help others, is the ability to push and help and support the teams that are bringing medicine to patients around the world that change their lives, that makes a difference. And I think that that's why I'm passionate about this industry and about doing what I do.
Absolutely.
I think the ability to influence others and to create policy and to put together strategies and to do this at a global level is very exciting. Of course, not all of them, not all of the days are that exciting, but knowing that you can help others is what keeps me going. And certainly the people I work with.
That resonates with me, honestly. It's what I see in clinical research too. Really, the driver is, we're all in it together, trying to make sure that we put out something that's going to be safe and effective for patients. Do you have any advice for people who are interested in breaking into the biotech industry with a career in compliance? Would you advise that they, go off and become a lawyer? Are there any curriculums, or is there anything that you think could help people who are interested in this career?
There's a lot of information out there, but I think the best advice I can give people is meet somebody that's already doing what you want to do and have the conversation. Really understand if this moves you and why does it move you and if this is the right fit for you. Talk to people. See if you can do an internship. See if you can find a way to do part of this work and how do you feel about it. It's interesting. My oldest is a compliance lawyer now, and he knew he wanted to be a lawyer at a very, very young age. As a matter of fact, he used to tell me when he was probably 6 or 7 years old that he was going to be a lawyer and take me out to lunch in his nice car when he became a lawyer. And so now he's a compliance lawyer. And the reason he would tell you he loves it is because the ability to help others and make a difference. And so I think that if you have that passion and that's a calling, you're going to find your way into compliance. You're going to find a way in many other professions, many other careers that give you that opportunity. So meet the people, that you're interested in talking to. Call them in LinkedIn, send them an email, see if you can set up some time and really find out if this is what you want to do. I highly recommend it. I would not want to do anything else. Hey, Claudia, I'm offering any of the listeners that it's interested in compliance to reach out to me in LinkedIn, to set up some time with me, to let me know how I can help. Because I think this is so important and such an amazing way to help others that if you're interested in it, I want to help you.
That is awesome. I am so, so happy that you are extending that invitation to everyone. And if you're listening and you're interested, please take advantage of that. Fabiana is an amazing leader. I did want to talk about something else, Fabiana, just because I think it is really, really important to highlight that you advanced your career during a time that is typically very challenging for women, early motherhood. How did you do that? And, do you have any advice for women or mothers who, are struggling to find work balance?
Oh, so well, that's a great question, Claudia. And I love it, especially for Latina women like you and I that were raised basically knowing that you had to make sacrifices. And I'd say you have to make sacrifices, you have choices, but you can have it all. I wanted to be a mother. I've been a mother since for the first time 25 years ago. It's going to be 26 years ago. And it was a time where it was a lot more difficult. I think today there's better career opportunities and there's better ways to balance it all, and the relationships are more fluid and changing. But I can tell you that I was so determined that I wanted all. I wanted a career and I wanted kids, that you have to have the right support system around you. So I had a lot of help. It takes a village for sure. And I have stories. I mean, all of my kids would only drink my milk for the first year of their lives because I thought that that was so important. I was traveling though at the time like crazy, so I would pump milk, freeze it, and FedEx it back to the house. So I've done things that I don't recommend people doing that way. Probably you don't have to do it that way anymore. But at that time, I had a lot of support. Sometimes I had to travel with a nanny, paid by myself, of course, so that I could be close to my baby when the baby was young. Um, I made sure I was present in their lives from a very, very young age. Um, Again, I would give them a dream. So I would make sure that I spoke with them every single night of their lives. When I was traveling, no matter where I was, I would put the alarm clock on 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, to make sure they heard my voice before they went to bed. And we had a ritual that it'd be like, well, mom, what should I dream of today? And I would give them a dream. Today you should dream of, I don't know, this beautiful this and beautiful that, and just have the conversation. And I remember exactly one time I was in Switzerland for a work meeting, and I didn't call in time to catch Vicky, my daughter, and I ended up calling her out of school to have the conversation with her out of the class. So I called the principal and said, "Can Vicky come out of the class? I need to talk to her for a minute. I'm calling from Switzerland." And they brought her out, and she laughed. And I said, "I'm sorry, I could not call you last night." And she laughed and she said, "I knew, and I knew you were going to call me." So, for years before I left, I would write in their shirts, in their school shirt underneath, so they would turn it up and read it. Te amo, I love you. So
That's so beautiful. I mean, talk about pulling on my heartstrings. I'm a new mom and I have a 2.5-year-old. So I personally am very grateful for the recent changes that I've seen in the industry,
oh yes.
in the workforce in general. I'm very much benefiting from that. I think that there are some things that still need to improve, but I'm one of those who benefited from the increased amount of maternity leave, being able to work remotely, instead of having to waste time driving to and from work, which now seems very silly.
I know. And at that time, I remember another story. A newspaper did an article on this. They interviewed me because, again, I was coming from, I think it was Switzerland again. And I used to bring my kids a toy from everywhere I was, just so they knew that I've been thinking of them. And at that time in Switzerland, I remember not finding anything because I didn't have enough time. And so at the airport, I ended up buying a robot, like the little robot thing. It was extremely expensive. By the time I came back to home, the thing did not work. My son was more excited with the packaging than with the thing. And I remember thinking this is a waste of money, time, and resources. So from that day on, for years to come, I bought a lot of little gifts and I would hide them in the garage. So when I came from a trip, I would grab one of the little gifts and give it to them. They'd be as happy as they could be. And it was something I bought around the corner. So, you become resourceful, you become effective, you become efficient. You have the right people to support you, and you're always there for your kids. You'll be fine, and you continue growing your career and making a difference. And it's inspiring to them because now as adults, or almost adults, they seen it and they seen what you've done and they seen how you treated others, and it makes a difference in their lives.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
I love how
Vicky, for
creative.
example, tattooed in her arm the te amo that I used to write in her shirts.
Oh, and that's what I was gonna say. How creative you were able to get with, with what you had when you were home, right? You
Oh,
really
yeah.
took advantage of that time, and you put in efforts to make things that are memorable for them.
Yes.
And I
And the
think
other
that's
thing,
really important. And based on what you said, one of them has a tattoo of it. It was that
yes,
memorable.
yes. And the other one has a tattoo with a typical knife that you are given when you are born in Argentina, pass on family to family. So they're very emotional about their upbringing, and they're very positive and very happy and loving as a result. But the downside of that, and there's a downside always, and this is something that took me years to learn, you have to say no too. I hate, because I don't have time going to school events and that plays and stuff like that. Soccer games, I told them long time ago, unless you're going to win the World Cup, just don't expect that I can make all of those. So you have to choose, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to not be available for every single thing that your kid does, but it's important. And I say this is what makes a difference, is that they know that no matter what, they can count on you.
I'm so happy that you took time to talk to me today, Fabiana. This has been such a great conversation.
I appreciate it. I feel the same, Claudia. I hope this is the first of many. And again, count on me anytime that we want to send a message of yes, it can be done. Yes, you need the right people around you. Yes, we're here to help.
Well, that brings our episode on compliance careers in biotech to a close.